friends and community. Wow, we're back in show. Well, not just yet. God willing, we should all be back here very soon praying again. Well, another week in this country and another week of unrest. You know this saying that says you got to live with the times. The founder of Chabad, the Alter Rebbe, said that means for us that we got to live with the weekly Torah portion. That means we got to look in that week's Torah portion and see what lessons, what messages could I take to my life. In this week's Torah portion is a very interesting story at the end of the Parsha. The Torah says that Miriam and Aaron were having a conversation. Miriam, Moshe Rabbeinu's sister, and Aaron, his brother, were talking about Moses. And Miriam turns to Aaron and says, "Did you hear the news?" And Aaron says, "What?" She says, "I heard from Moshe Rabbeinu's wife, from Sipporah, that Moses separated from his wife." And she says, "I don't understand. I'm a prophetess. God speaks to me. You're a prophet. God speaks to you. And we're both married. Why did our brother separate from his wife?" The Torah continues that God heard this and was very upset. He turned to Miriam and he said, "How dare you talk about my faithful servant Moshe in such a way?" And the Torah says God punishes her, that she gets tsaras, she gets leprosy. Aaron turns to Moses, his brother, and says, "Moshe, our sister Miriam, what are we going to do?" Right away, Moshe Rabbeinu, his first reaction, he turns to God and he says, "Kel na rafana la," God, please cure her. The Torah says that someone that had tsaras, someone that had this disease of leprosy, they had to be quarantined for a week. Torah says something very interesting, that the entire Jewish people, 3 million people, waited for Miriam a full week. They waited for her an entire week until she got better. There are 3 powerful lessons we could take from this story. Lesson number 1 is that yes, Moshe Rabbeinu separated from his wife. He did separate. That was true. But there's a back end to the story, like many times there is. God told him to separate. You see, yes, God did communicate with Miriam. God did communicate with Aaron. She was a prophetess. He was a prophet. But they were nothing close. They were not on the same level as Moses. Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, he became holy like an angel. Yes, physically, he might have looked like me or you. But he was holy like an angel. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep 40 days, 40 nights, and God told him that he became so holy, being up with God on top of the mountain, that when he comes back down, he cannot go back to his wife and have marital relationships with her. So it's a very powerful lesson here. Many times we see a story, we hear something, right away we pass judgment. We're very judgmental, and we say, "Did you hear it? Can't believe it." Wait. Ethics of our fathers tells us that they done us kol adam lekav zchus. The first thing we got to judge somebody favorably. Maybe there's a back end to the story. Maybe there's part of the picture that I don't know. And many times it's that way. So lesson number 1 is before we pass judgment on someone, make sure you have all the details. You know everything. You know the full story. You didn't just see something posted on social media and right away, boom, you pass judgment on them. Wait. Do you know? Is this true? Who's saying it? So on and so forth. Got the message? That's lesson 1. Lesson number 2, so very powerful. How did Moshe react? Here he had his older sister and brother talking negative about him, talking derogatory. Hey, Moshe separates from his wife. How does Moshe respond? He doesn't say, "Hey, you deserve to be punished. God gave you leprosy. Good for you. Next time you learn not to talk bad about me." Right away, the first thing he does is he prays for her. He prays for her to get better. Even though he's 1,000% right, he does not seek revenge. He doesn't seek to get back at her. He just wants the best for his sister. He wants her to get healthy, wants her to get better. Many times we have disputes with people. I could be 100% right. And maybe you're right. But don't take revenge. You have an issue with the other person. What does the Torah say? Pray for them. You think they're off the deep end? Pray for them to get better. Pray for them to see the light. Don't take revenge against somebody else, even though you may be 100% right. Lesson number 3. How do we define Miriam? And it's another very important lesson. Yes, the Torah punishes her. The Torah says that God punishes her for what she did. But then everybody waits a full week for her. Why would we wait for somebody like that? She did something bad. She spoke about her brother. She got punished, suffered the consequences. 3 million people have to wait for her. If that makes any sense. For somebody that did something so bad that got God angry and he had to punish her. And the Torah says, yes, we do not define somebody by just one action that they did. Many times it could be a good person, they do something bad, and right away, boom, we come down on them like a ton of bricks. The Torah says, judge somebody like you want to be judged. What you don't want to be done to somebody else, what you don't want to be done to yourself, don't do to somebody else. That's a great principle in the Torah. How do you want to be judged? Do you want to be defined by a negative action you did, by one negative action? That's the way you want to be defined. So don't define others that way. How do we remember Miriam? So let's go back to even before Moshe was born. Before Moshe was born, we know the evil Pharaoh put out a decree that every Jewish boy has to be killed, thrown in the Nile. So Miriam's parents, Amram and Yocheved, they said, oh, why should we have more kids? They got divorced. And Miriam turned to them and said, you're worse than Pharaoh. Pharaoh's only killing boys. You're killing girls as well. They said, Miriam, you're right. They got back together. And guess what? They had a boy. Who? Moses himself. So she had Moshe Rabbeinu. She had this little baby, Moses. But the Egyptian soldiers would come to the house to snatch away Jewish boys to throw them in the Nile. So she had to hide him. She created this little basket and put him in the water, hoping for a miracle. The miracle did happen. Pharaoh's daughter picked him out of the water, and the rest is history. But the Torah says there was one person that waited and watched the entire time with her brother, making sure that he would be safe and okay. And that was Miriam, his older sister. The Torah tells us when they crossed the sea, when the Jews came out, it says that Miriam danced with tambourines. And the commentaries say, where does she have tambourines from? And listen to this about Miriam. That while during the deepest, darkest times of the Jewish slavery, Miriam encouraged the Jewish women by making tambourines and telling them, don't let this slavery get to us. We're going to be out of here. One day we're going to be free. Let's make tambourines, and one day we're going to celebrate. We're going to use them. That's what Miriam is remembered for. That's how we define Miriam. You know, there are 6 remembrances that we say every day. The 5th one is, remember what God did to Miriam. It doesn't say, remember what Miriam did. It says, remember what God did to Miriam. Remember not to talk bad about somebody else. But that's not the way we define Miriam. We don't define her by this story. We remember her for all the great things she did. And that's why she was worthy that the entire 3 million people waited for her for an entire week. So let us take these lessons to ourselves. Number 1, don't pass judgment right away on somebody. Number 2, don't take revenge. Pray for the other person. Number 3, don't define them by a negative thing they did. Remember all the positive things that they do. Let us all heal together. Let us all grow from these challenging times together. And let us all, God willing, live in a world of ultimate peace and pray for that day that it should happen very soon, the coming of Mashiach speedily now. Wishing you a good Shabbos, a peaceful Shabbat Shalom. Take care.